So finding a position that is helpful for you for meditation. So this act of coming, intending to come and listen within our being, to the whole of our being. And really taking the time as we begin to, with care, attend to find a position that is going to really support your being to arrive here. Meditation not as something that we're going to start to do, but which we're already engaging with in how we arrive. Bringing a caring attention into your body, into your posture. Letting your weight invite your attention down towards the ground. Feeling the support of the earth underneath you. Whether we're sitting, whether we're lying, whether we're standing, there's always a contact with the earth supporting us. Seeing if you can let your attention settle into that place where we're sitting with the earth, actually. Feeling the weight and the earthiness of your body. Feel the support underneath you. Also feeling from where your body is touching the ground in your hips, feeling where your spine rises naturally towards the sky, like a tree. Letting yourself sway a little side to side, back and forth, to find where you're naturally alert in your spine. So we're not forcing ourselves to arrive here, we're allowing our body to settle and expand. We're gathering here with kindness. Noticing also the space around your body. The gentleness and the openness of the space that is here for you. It's how very often when we get caught in something within us, we contract and we harden and we lose contact with the earth. We lose contact with this gentle space around our body. It's just very gently touching our skin. Seeing if we can let ourselves feel the welcome of the space around us that's always here. The space within which we're welcome and we can move, we can breathe. The space isn't pushing or pulling or judging us. We can just be here as we are. It is how just by bringing your attention to, say, the support of the earth, the welcome of the space, your mind recognizes it doesn't have to stay so contracted. It can explore, open, learn from what is naturally present here. We're connected to the earth, we're held by the space. Noticing our aliveness here. Maybe the trembling of our body or our breath rising and falling. Or the warmth of our flesh. Seeing just the vibrancy of our own aliveness here. We're both grounded, welcomed by the space. We're flowing. Breathing in, breathing out, nourished by this air. It's very consciously and gently noticing how much part of this bigger life we are. Letting that hold us, breathing in the nourishment. Breathing out to maybe our just a quiet knowing, yes, I'm connected. I'm listening. Noticing what it's like to give ourselves this time, this space, this support to listen. Listen into our own being, to listen into how we're connected to the bigger life that we're part of. What happens when we feel held by the earth, or welcomed by the space, or nourished by the air? Give this beautiful gift of our presence to that. Noticing if there's any softening, any opening, any resting that can happen. Noticing also that as we taste a little our connectedness, there's some small space to just allow, oh, there's a tension here, there's a contraction there, there's a thought that's coming, that's going. Maybe I can notice also a little more space with it. A little more gentleness or presence. So we start to receive more fully also. Noticing also as we give the gift of our presence to just what it's like to be here, to connect with the earth, to feel the welcome of the space, the nourishment of the air, our own aliveness. Notice somehow how we're giving back our listening into this life that we're part of. A gift of consciousness of being here. knowing that we're alive, connected. This is a gift to our own being and to the bigger life we're participating in. The earth, the air, the space, the aliveness of all that is. We're waking up a little here. So as we come to the end of the meditation, we can maybe breathe out the care we feel to this earth that we're part of. Gratitude, love, wonder. As we move out of the meditation, we can keep this kind of alignment of heart, alignment of attention. That is listening within our body, listening to our connectedness. Letting our mind know it can be spacious, gentle, attentive. As we engage with our eyes, with our ears, with our touch, the earth will still be underneath us, the space still around us. Our aliveness and our listening still here. When you're ready, you can, if your eyes were closed, open them. And I wanted to talk a little more. I listened to the talk Tanisra gave last week, and where she talked about changing the story, which of course practice can bring us to do in so many ways, but changing the story particularly in relation to how we're relating to each other, how we're relating to the earth. And I really I thought it was a wonderful talk, so thank you, Tanisra. And I wanted to lead on from there, really, and hopefully say some things that can complement what she was saying. So in that talk, Tanisra was very much saying how there's a dominant kind of template that the society encourages to take on. Somebody just saying sound is cutting out. Is sound cutting out for other people? No, sounds okay. All right. So she was saying in the society that there are these dominant forces that tell us that everything's about objectification, about consumption, and that the direction that we're going with this earth that we're part of is just we can't do anything. So there's a helplessness. And I know that's certainly a very, very strong thread that I feel in what's going on. and yet that we can access more deeply than that. We can, with awareness, with intention, by feeling back into our vulnerability, we actually feel into our belonging. And I really, really love this thread because I feel it's very real. So many stories we take in or we tell ourselves. A lot of practice is about learning, as I'm sure you know, learning to step into a deeper space of awareness where we can receive, oh, this is the template that's going on. And I think this is particularly important in relation to how we're relating to each other as beings and to the earth. So it's where practice also meets our environment. And it's a lot around how we cause suffering or not. So I've been reading a book for a long time called Spell of the Sensuous by David Abrams. And he really talks about how humans have become almost utterly self-referential. So, you know, if we think about everything we look at YouTube or in films or all of this, it's very often just relating to the human world. It's not relating to the sensitivity, to the aliveness, to the vibrancy of the world that we belong to. And very often, as I'm sure you may be able to feel, when we're caught in a sense of suffering, we become caught in a very tight sense of self. We're only referring to that cycle of what's going on. At least that's how it is for me. And so there's something about opening out beyond that, into the vibrancy of this living world, that can really help us to relieve our own suffering and also to participate in our world in a way that is more connected. And so Bhikkhu Bodhi, who is someone who I deeply respect, as many of you, I'm sure you know, is this scholar monk who's spent decades studying the Pali Canon. And he's come to this beautiful understanding around compassion that he shares in many ways, but he shared it in an article in 2014 where he is also, it was at the time of the climate march in 2014. And he talks very much about what Tanisha was talking about, where he talks about we're in a culture of death, actually. Where this whole paradigm or constellation of views where everything is, the biggest value is financial value. So everything becomes an object to be used, to be consumed. And then therefore we're constantly running after the next thing and on a finite planet, infinite growth on a finite planet. And that's one of the underlying paradigms that is causing such a problem. And so I find it very beautiful because, you know, here we are with the classic Buddhist teachings of impermanence, suffering, and non-self that can be sometimes taken as quite world denying, you know, kind of like, oh, well, it's all impermanent anyway, and etc. Which of course is not a good way of picking up the teaching, but it can be done like that. Or it can be taken as, well, spirituality is to take us somewhere safe, kind of where we're maybe a bit protected from the suffering of the world. What Bhikkhu Bodhi says in this article is very much, we need to move from a paradigm of that objectification to a subjective sense of this is a living world, basically, of respect for the vibrancy that we're part of. Where we acknowledge that we are living in a finite world, where we function in a way where there's solidarity with these other living beings that we are in relationship with, whether that be people, whether that be trees, whether that be the things that we're eating, you know, restoring this sensitivity and simplicity, because of course, if we're more in touch with what we're actually living, then that undercuts the desire to always, there's something like we always need more when we're not fulfilled. But Ajahn Sumedhā, so one of my teachers, used to quote William Blake and say, kiss the joy as it flies. So it's, instead of like, well, everything's just impermanent and so we just let it flow by, it's like really taste that we're part of this living web and be here in this moment, tasting where we're in contact, even though that it's impermanent. So we don't need to consume so much. We don't need to keep getting to fulfill ourselves. So Bhikkhu Bodhi also talks about coming back to some simplicity, to some contentment. And I think these are very, very important teachings. So when he talks about this movement away from a model of objectification and into a more subjective sense of the universe, he says, most deeply of all, we can awaken in us an aspiration towards communion with the cosmos and with all living beings, a harmonization between human ideals and the creative capacities of the universe. And I'm like, whoa. But, this is what, there's something about what Tanisha was talking about so beautifully last week, where we're listening back in and we're allowing the creativity of our connectedness to come through in a way that undercuts those paradigms of we basically, we're just stuffed and, we have to keep going in the way that we're going. And so, of course, we need to do concrete actions, and very much so, but there's something about refinding our heart in it that Joanna Macy also, she's very good on this, through connectedness, actually, through vulnerability, through sensitivity. These things we've learnt to move away from that feel very powerful. And so I was thinking about this because it can, I was thinking, well, how has this happened for me in my life? How have I felt a shift from feeling more, I'm not saying I feel fully connected at all, but I've certainly, at the start of my practice, I felt quite disconnected from my heart, from my body. Thank you. Somebody's saying in the comment, read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer for an alternative view of our place on earth. Thank you. Yes. So yes, I was thinking also in my own being what teachings have helped me to find more a place of listening and to find more a trust in sensitivity, and to feel some steadiness in that, even within the world that we live in. And honestly, it's some of the very simple teachings, some of the very early teachings have really helped me. So there's this beautiful sutta on the 8 streams of blessing, that basically the first 5 of the 8 are the first 5 precepts, and then there's the 3 refuges. And I really very often am grateful for these teachings. So although I've been practicing for like 2/3 of my life, sometimes these very, for me, they're very deep teachings. So say the first, so I'll say a bit more about this. So say the first precept on harmlessness. In terms of this model of coming back to a sense of listening, a sense of sensitivity, a sense of being able to honor our presence and our part in life and how we choose to act. say even the first precept around harmlessness is such a powerful mirror of like, it's a bit like just a reminder to pause and listen, to come inward and to go, so is the way I'm relating, is it causing harm? Is there a way that I could cause less harm in what I'm doing? And so it both provides, say, a sense of protection, because we know we're doing our best to not inflict harm on other beings or the environment that we're part of. So there's a protection that helps us to relax. And then there's also a mirror as to like, well, you know, what am I doing here? How could I relate in a way that is more connected to what I'm actually in contact with? So, and in terms of the earth, this can be an everyday contemplation, or our connection to the earth, say with the food that we're eating. You know, we can feel, oh, maybe it's harmful if I, you know, kind of buy something that has caused a lot of suffering, or that is coming from the other side of the planet, or, you know, we can bring our reflective attention to that, and we can choose to act, not as a should, not as a right or a wrong, but coming from our own sensitivity. So it's not saying there are right or wrong things necessarily to do, but just like we tune back into our own sensitivity and we honor that, and we honor the world we're part of in what we offer from there. And so I find like that precept, but also say the precepts around speech, around you know, not deliberately clouding our mind, not taking what's not given, not misusing our sexual energy. You know, none of this is about judgment. It's about asking ourselves to reflect, to be awake, to be aware. How am I relating? Am I just going with what I've learned? Am I doing something that feels harmful? And not to judge ourselves, really as this encouragement to come back to our own mirror, our own listening, allow ourselves to be sensitive, create some safety in our own world and the world that we're part of, which is very important, I find, in a world that tends to be quite disregarding, quite discarding. So that's something that's very, so those are the first of the 5 streams of blessing, the first 5 precepts. And then there are the refuges, which all of you, of course, know what the refuges are. But just to say that for me, and I think it's very valuable to continue to use them as an active practice in helping ourselves to question and to find a different ground with, what are the stories I'm carrying? What is the way I'm relating to this being, to the bigger being I'm part of, bigger life that I'm part of? So, and again, that like for me, it's a thing to take not as a distant spiritual thing, but to really reflect a kind of so spirituality isn't distance. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's that these are very immediate reflections. So say around Buddha, like, so there's the historical personage that can be encouraging to reflect. A historical person actually lived, who outlined teachings for exploring our mind, exploring our body, exploring the connectedness of our being, and for exploring how we create suffering. And he gave a lot of really quite amazing tools, you know. And he also, you know, he was active in the society he was part of. So he ordained women, for one thing, in a period when that wasn't particularly the done thing, and an issue that's still being struggled with 2,500 years later, you know. So it's like he was active, he was engaged in a certain way as well. And really beautifully in this Earth Week, when he was faced with hordes of delusion arriving and trying to take him over, he touched the earth as his witness. And for me, that's like, yeah, we come to a deeper connectedness in our being that helps us to see when we're being attacked by hordes of delusion, just by touching the earth, like we were doing in the meditation. Touch the earth, touch the space, touch the listening of our being. It's a beautiful paradigm that helps us to get a clearer perspective. So also, as Tanisra was saying last week, this vipassana, this clear seeing that helps us to shift our viewpoint. So which relates, of course, to not just the historical Buddha, but Buddho, to that which is awake within us. This which is awake right now within us, that which is listening in you right now. This awakeness, this awareness that is very spacious, very receiving, and as Tanisra was saying last week, with intention, can help us to discern where are we holding on to something that causes harm. Whether that be a template that we've learned from our society, whether that be a habit that we've picked up, whether it be an old formation within us, we can start to have the spaciousness to know it and to allow it to move through without it obliging us to act in certain ways, without it taking us over. So this is a very freeing capacity. So refuge in Buddha in that way can also be just a really, really helpful ongoing reflection in this possibility of changing stories for ourselves and for the world we're part of. And then refuge in dharma. So dharma, as it can be the teachings, which are not dogmas, you know, the teachings as things to explore. And most powerfully, you know, just what they, like going through some of the teachings, what they propose for us to look into. So often when we're suffering or when we are taking on a template of something and we're not really conscious of that, so say the template of objectification or of we need all the time, or we can't do anything about what's happening on the planet. Those templates, it's like in the teachings, we're encouraged to look into other parts of our being. So the qualities of the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, our capacity to listen and respond, equanimity, our capacity to stay present with suffering, to respond also, or sympathetic joy, where instead of a world of competition, we're like, oh, how amazing, you've received something wonderful, you know, or you have really good practice, or so it opens us into a field of generosity and fluidity of being that sometimes we just don't notice when we're caught in the trammels. So yeah, the teaching for me encourages to look into actual qualities or areas of our being, also into awareness, and also to notice that which is subtle within us. So again, when our attention is taken by something, often we go to that which is intense, and we don't notice the touch of the feet on the earth, the space around us, the nourishment of the air, all of these things that help us to realign in a more connected universe. And so then Dharma also, one translation is nature. So in the forest tradition that I kind of grew up in, I really love that aspect of learning from nature. So we, you know, the teachings around impermanence, around non-self, we can learn so much from nature. I'm very lucky. I live in a forest, so I have lots of trees around me. So, and I learn a lot from the cycles and my compost toilet. You know, food in, food out, feed the whatevers. You know, feed me again, etc. You know, the cycles that we're part of. We can learn so much, and we receive so much, and can give back so much just in that appreciation, that learning. So dharma, refuge in dharma. And so with that, you know, so for me, say with the trees, there's that appreciation. Oh, I'm part of this bigger community. And so Sangha is the third refuge as community. So whether that be spiritual friends, whether that be the trees, the plants, and also the community that we take part in through our vulnerability. So Bhikkhu Bodhi's article was called Moving from a Culture of Death to a Culture of Life. And the teachings encourage us to embrace our vulnerability, embrace that we do age, we do die. But in that embracing, we're actually coming to life. We're coming to the fact that we are sensitive, we're changing, we're vulnerable, and we can meet each other and the bigger life that we're part of from here with care. And so that unpicks the roots of objectification, of being willing to just use the planet or other beings, or to stick to habits in ourselves that we know are harmful. So if there's anything helpful in there, I'd really encourage you to take it with you. And just these refuges, there are things where we can consciously turn ourselves towards that can support us. So these streams of blessing, that it says they change our lineage, they change our sense of alignment, and they can do that very powerfully. So I encourage you to explore them, as I'm sure you all are. And I'll just end with a poem, as I know some of you need to leave at 6. So I'll end with a poem, and then anyone who wants to stay can stay on for some questions, and anyone who needs to leave, you're welcome to. So this is a poem by David White called What to Remember When Waking. In that first hardly noticed moment in which you wake, coming back to this life from the other, more secret, movable and frighteningly honest world where everything began, there is a small opening into the new day, which closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can live